Hello, everybody. How are you doing today? This is Anthony Metivier from magneticmemorymethod.com. The weirdest thing happened. All of a sudden, I was doing some memory work, and I was in a hallway with Cobra Commander, and I could see him in my mind. This is the weirdest thing, and I can see it right now. And so, whatever was going on in my life where I couldn't see images in my head has changed, and we're going to talk about that today. And it's the weirdest thing. It's the weirdest thing. And I actually waited about a week and a half before saying anything because I wanted to play around with it a little bit more. It's still not fully developed in any sense that would really, I don't know, but it's very, very exciting and very strange because when you go through so much of your life not having a mind's eye, so to speak, or having a very weak one, because there was a weak sense of visuality, but then all of a sudden, seeing Cobra Commander, like you could reach out and touch him. This is new territory and a brave new world, to be sure. So if you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. If you're new to the channel, get subscribed, say hello into the chat. And yeah, this is interesting, especially if you're interested in Aphantasia. And I've had all kinds of emails over some time now from people who have this situation where they can't see pictures in their mind. And I always said, well, what's the problem? I mean, you can use memory techniques without them. I've been using them for years. Lynn Kelly, who wrote Memory Craft, apparently also doesn't see images in her mind, and we talk about Aphantasia. And you can learn more about that. And it just really shouldn't be necessary to see images in your mind to use memory techniques, because she is a very accomplished memory competitor and author and user and thinker about memory techniques. And I just have used them very, very successfully and well, and sat and competed and, whatever, had a lot of fun with memory techniques without seeing images in my head. And in fact, they always seem like a deviation from the actual skill, and it's still kind of new. But in any case, I don't know what to make of it other than this happened. So David is here. Good to see you, David. Thanks for saying hello. If you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. And let me give you some more context here. Because it's not why this happened, but when it happened, is I've been working a lot with this book, Memorandum. And this is one of these books by Woody Aragon that is for magicians and goes deep into all kinds of magical things that you would do with a deck of cards. And he has a particular suggestion for how to memorize a particular order of cards to make these routines happen. And quite some time ago, I made a live stream about this book and some of the things that he says in there. And I finally got around to practicing and working with the stack. And the idea is, one of the things, you would go stop like that, you'd look at a card, and you'd see the card, and you go 10 of diamonds, and you just go, that must be 13 cards. Now, if this worked, if following his suggestion works, this should be the 13th card. So let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So it works. And it was an unusual way to memorize the deck. It's very different than I would normally memorize a deck of cards, but you now have not only knowledge of every card in the deck, but you also have knowledge of the number of where it is in the deck. So you can do things like that, which is just, to have people cut to the deck, look at a thing. Oh, I got the 10 of diamonds again. It was 13, but, look at another thing, 7 of diamonds, and then you should know what number that is. And so the 7 of diamonds should be 10 if I memorized it correctly. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It works. It's miraculous. So I was playing around with this, and I got to the 9 of hearts, which I guess would be the 30th card. I won't bore you by counting down, but I think it's the 30th card, the 9 of hearts. And the 9 of hearts, in my way that I memorize cards normally, is Cobra Commander, and it's sometimes a Viper. And the reason why that it is that way is because it's based on the major system, which he's not a fan of, and I understand his reason why. but I wanted to try his thing. So I was trying this thing. And anyway, I got to this card as I was memorizing his stuff. And I was following his suggestions, but still basing on the major. And then all of a sudden, what happened was, bam! Not only could I see Cobra Commander, but I could see the memory palace in my mind. And I could it's like I could reach out and touch him. Now, Cobra Commander doesn't exist, so this is what makes it even so more extraordinary. And he kind of like has this Gumby characteristic to him. And it's really this weird thing where I could see, like normally I would be able to reach out and touch something and imagine what it feels like kinesthetically. But to actually see it and have this sense of this gumminess with vision and the light, the quality of the light on Cobra Commander. It's just the weirdest thing that has ever happened to me in my life. And so why this is interesting and important, and we're going to talk about this in depth today, is, and we're going to talk in this structure, myth of the Sikh poet, why I still think that this whole idea of aphantasia is a bit dangerous, memory techniques never being solely visual anyway, and then 3 visualization exercises that helped and I think are part of how this switch happened, this transformation happened. And we'll have some chat, of course. If you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. Feel free to get involved in the replay as well below and in the discussion area there. But one of the things that happened that may be useful to you is I talked to a guy named Alec Figueira, and we did an interview, and he talked about how he has helped people see images in their minds. And again, it's not that I've never seen something in my head, but I wouldn't call it an image. It's more like a ghostly outline, sort of sense of light in the world. I don't know how to describe it. It's not seeing pictures anyway, not like this. So really, really strange. And he apparently helps people start to see pictures in their mind. And so it's been a very, very popular episode of the podcast, and apparently he's helping people left, right, and center. So the link to that is in the description below if you want to listen to it. And there's also a couple other resources that are important. So this is also linked below, a post all about Aphantasia, its history, stuff about Penn Jillette, who apparently has it, who is a magician, and maybe he wants to try the memorandum deck. I don't know, but there's that. And then, of course, I mentioned Lynn Kelly, who wrote Memory Craft, and we talk about Aphantasia on the interview, and I sort of push back on this idea that anybody is seeing pictures in their minds, because I couldn't conceive of it. I still sort of can't conceive of it, but I've had it now, and it's the weirdest thing. So let's check in. Oh, the other thing too is that there are some visualization exercises that I've practiced, and now I'm revisiting it all to see if we can rock and roll with this. And I have a new training that may be part of how this switch happened, because it's called Brain Exercise Bootcamp, which you can get now at magneticmemory-method.com/BEB if you want. During a special launch period, there's a special price, etc. There's no link for that. You'll have to type that. But it's something that may have helped me a great deal going through all of these exercises, make this change. And most of them are non-visual exercises. And it can be that working on the non-visual stuff has transformed the visual things. Anyway, we'll check in with our chat, and then we'll get started with the myth of the Sikh poet and a kind of bias that I know that I have about this that I don't think changes much, but it might help people to think this through. So Nidhi is here. Hello, Nidhi. Thanks for saying hello. You say, I would like to know that if you don't see your things, won't you forget it? And how would you recall if you can't see anything? Very good question, and that's the whole reason why I've created material on Aphantasia before, because you don't need to see images in your mind to remember things and to recall them using mnemonics, and we'll talk about why in today's session. So good question, but we're getting there, and in the second section, I will suggest that memory techniques were never primarily visual, and it's been in the literature from the very, very beginning what worked and what will work for anybody, I'm sure, and what we should concentrate on no matter what, whether we're super visual or not. So David says, I'm very visual, so visual that if I'm driving and my wife tries to talk to me, I tend to visualize automatically. I miss exits. Can't talk while I'm driving. How interesting. How interesting. So that is very interesting. And it may, to map my own story onto that, it may be why that I have no problem listening to people talk endlessly, and I used to drive listening to audiobooks like crazy, and I'm just listening to them, enjoying them, following the plot. I can often recite what the plot of different books are very, very well, and not seeing anything in my mind, just seeing the highway. But I am experiencing something in my head, and I would say that there still is a visual component to it. And some research that I've read shows that even in these people who apparently have aphantasia, visual centers of the brain are being fired off, and I would say so are mine, even as we speak. I'm not sure that we get away from that. And you can look into lots of books about that and read David Eagleman and read Stephen Kosslyn, etc. All right, but what's this whole myth of the whole Sikh poet thing all about? Well, I was very concerned when this aphantasia stuff came across my radar, and I started to see all these people emailing about how depressed they were and how excluded from the human game they felt, and on and on and on, these really, really sad stories. And I just thought, how can this be? There's so many people who have obviously accomplished great things. And at that time, I didn't know Lynn Kelly had a lack of a mind's eye, so to speak, at all. But we heard all kinds of people who have accomplished so many incredible things. So why should not having a mind's eye be a barrier? I never would have even thought of it as not having a mind's eye. I always just thought it was low visual threshold. That's the way I always described it. I have a low visual threshold. And this is the best words that I could come up with. I maybe have read them somewhere, and I have cryptomnesia, and I can't remember where I read them, and think that I sort of just spontaneously created that term. I don't know. I remember also hearing when I was very young that I had imagination deficit disorder. I don't know where they came up with that, but I couldn't play the recorder for whatever reason, and I think it was because they were trying to make me memorize music, learn music too quickly. I couldn't sort of follow. I couldn't picture in my head the relationship between how to play the recorder and the actual instrument in my hands, and they rushed through it, and then they said, you're not going to be allowed to go into band class. You have imagination deficit disorder. And it was just like, what? And I don't remember the whole story, but somehow we fought to get me into band class anyway, and they figured that the best instrument for me would be the least complicated one, called the trombone. And I don't know that the trombone is actually that uncomplicated, but I still couldn't read music for whatever reason. And so I just used to watch the guy, his slide beside me. His name was Adam. And I would just memorize where he put his slide and use other tools of just absorbing music. And I memorized all the songs that we needed to play, all the scales that we needed to play. And, the weirdest thing of it all is that I wound up being able to do sight reading at the end, and competed in sight reading, and stayed in band for a long time, went to the School of Music, and was able to do this, all eventually learning to read music very slowly, but I was able to read music. But I never could visualize an instrument in my head or anything like this. So that was a very interesting experience. Anyhow, when I heard all these people saying how depressed they were and how locked out of some special human experience that they had, I got very sad. And I still am very sad, because as cool as this visualization has been, I don't feel like I was locked out of a special human experience all this time. Far from it. It's just like this new kind of novelty that maybe I've experienced many, many times before. I just wasn't really aware of it. But I know the damage of taking on a label that people give you that may or may not be warranted. And that happened to me when I got called bipolar. And then because I was given now this label for what was supposedly wrong with me, I raced out to follow all kinds of recommendations that really did a lot of damage, in ways that we don't have to get into now, but it was terrible. And I became as I was able to divorce myself with this idea of bipolar or manic depression, I became very interested in how this works in society and did some research, and was originally going to do my dissertation called The Myth of the Sikh Poet, about how society willingly takes on these labels and then reinforces the stories and stigmatize themselves based on mythical stories of the disease because of all sorts of things in our society. So we watch movies that help us understand what a disease is supposed to be, and we think, oh, that's like me, and then we conform to all kinds of recommendations that cause us not to get a second opinion, etc. So it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with the science here or that there aren't medicines that help. It just means that we sometimes exacerbate the illness because we're participating in the stories surrounding it that actually impede the cure rather than help the cure, because we don't live scientifically, we live mythically. And we can't really stop ourselves from that at some level. Nietzsche had made it very clear in different ways in his philosophy that we need myths, we need stories. This is one of the core arguments that are in many psychological texts. We use narrative in order to function and survive in the world. But we often do it to our neglect because we don't live scientifically. We don't actually we don't participate in the science that guides and governs our cures. And because we don't do that, and we just take recommendations and live them out uncritically, hoping that mother doctor and mother science and all this stuff will do the work for us without us being a participant in it, that we're going to come out on the other end. And the reality is that rarely works. That's how we become enslaved by the corporate agendas that want to sell more and more pills and influence the doctors that recommend them more and more, and influence and shape the data that influence the doctors, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a very, very complex puzzle, and there's no right or wrong to it. And overall, there is probably more positive to it in the end as humanity evolves, assuming there is better to get to, which is not clear. But that's part of my concern about aphantasia, and it will continue to be part of my concern about it. And so I lay that out there as something that colors how that I approach this issue, and caution people to not self-diagnose, which was what the interview with Alec was all about. And so I highly encourage you to follow that link and listen to what he has to say about aphantasia and the help that he's creating for people, because in some sense I think he's aligned with this message. So ultimately, my big question for anybody who has this, is this a negative? I never thought it was a negative. I still can't imagine why that one would spin it that way when there's so many success stories of people who claim that they have this condition. They haven't turned it into a problem. They don't buy into a story of it being a problem, and they don't create self-punishment for themselves or others, right? And the question we would just ask is, if this is bad, who wins if they're right? Well, if doctors win that there is such a thing and it is a problem, then there may be a whole industry that develops around this, which would be very, very sad, especially the consequences that come from trying new therapies, trying new pills, all sorts of things, when maybe this isn't a problem in the first place. I don't know whether it's a problem or not. I can't really tell, but I'm concerned about it, and I raised the issue just to think it through, which many people have supported that initiative, and I'm very glad to see that happening. And again, those links are down in the description below, or to the side, or wherever they appear on whatever device you're watching from. All right, so if you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up, and let's carry forward with the next section here, which is to explain that memory techniques were never solely visual. And this is really, really important to understand. And there's lots and lots of examples of why this is the case. If you're interested, then I highly recommend that you read the memory code for just one source, also by Lynn Kelly, who wrote Memory Craft. And in the memory code, she talks about the Lukasa and she talks about a great deal and uses it as a teaching tool to show how memory works. And so the interview with her is down in the link below, and you can check that out. And I highly recommend that you do, because it's something that can help you a great deal. And making memory tools physical is thousands and thousands of years old. I'll give you some more suggestions around this, because we know from lots of teaching in the tradition that they thought of the wax tablet metaphor for memory. And it was a metaphor of something physical. And they talked about treating your memory palace walls as if they were physical and you could write into the surface. That's a kinesthetic suggestion that helps you actually get more mental purchase in a non-visual way, right? And that's something I took very, very seriously. And there's stories of people using their buttons and touching their button to help recall what it is that they need to recall. And they fused it with some sort of mnemonic imagery, and they use that. And the physical aspects of it are so clear. We have it all over the world. Military badges, right? This is something we see with our eyes, but there's something physical to it. There's something tangible to it. So the Lukasa, or memory board, is a means of displaying information or encoding it in a different way, translating it in a different way, and allowing your brain to process what it is you want to remember in a different way that is not solely visual. Arguably, the visual element is one of the least things to it, even though it is there to see, but you're encoding things spatially, and you can actually touch it, and you would do well to touch it in order to have the feeling of where in space your information is. And if you've ever seen video of Lynn with a Lukasa, she often touches it in a way that shows this. And it's really, really important to get this, to understand this. So before we carry on, let me check in with the chat. Nicholas is here. Good to see you, Nicholas. You say, right on. Where focus goes, energy flows. Exactly. And some of you guys are so much better than I am at just cutting to the chase. That's exactly the message here. If you focus on this as a problem, you can make it a problem. I don't think it's a problem. I don't think it should be a problem. But it's up to you to focus in the way that's going to help you get somewhere. Focus on the solutions. That's what I always have tried to get myself to do. And when I do, it's amazing. Do I sometimes get caught in focusing on problems? Yes, everybody does. It's human. But when you can just focus on the solutions, as Nicholas says very, very well, where focus goes, energy flows. Thanks for that. Thumbs up to Nicholas. If you haven't hit that thumbs up yet, let's get started. And say hello to Sameh. Anthony, good to see you again. Good to see you again, Sameh. Thank you for being here. And if you're joining us, let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. So I hope this is something you can understand. Memory techniques were never solely visual, and I never even bothered to try to make them visual after something very special happened, which we'll talk about next. So I kept reading in the beginning, when I got into memory techniques, all kinds of memory books by memory competitors, and they kept talking about visuals, images, pictures. Just get a picture in your mind and all this. I'm just like, yeah, what? Like this ghostly, weird little image that I see sometimes, or feel that I see? Basically what I think that I see when I close my eyes, and I always say I have a low visual threshold and I don't see pictures in my mind, I just see this ghostly image. What I think I see is the light making streaks. So that's not really seeing an image in your imagination, right? But we know that people can break through this, and I was always amazed when Alec would tell me that he's been able to make this happen. So there you go. I never had a session with him, but it happened eventually, and I think I know why. But when I was pushing beyond the memory competitor books, I discovered, as many people do, there's thousands of years of history to this. And in 90 BCE, before the Common Era, 90, around then, circa, someone writes Rhetorica ad Herennium. Now, a lot of people think it's Cicero, but there's actually, from what I've read, no evidence that it was really from Cicero. And he said something in there that I really switched on to and paid attention to and made it the core of my practice with these techniques. lest you should perchance regard the memorizing of words either as too difficult or as of too little use, I must advise you why I do not disapprove of memorizing words. I believe that they who wish to do easy things without trouble and toil must previously have been trained in more difficult things. So he then says, nor have I included memorization of words to enable us to get verse by rote, but rather as an exercise whereby to strengthen that other kind of memory, the memory of matter, which is of practical use. Thus we may, without effort, pass from this difficult training to ease in that other memory. So there's a lot of things that I focused on here, but the number one thing that I focused on was words. And I just kept thinking, well, words, and learning more about the tradition and how the ancient people did it. And they use words to memorize words. And it's like mental Lego. They have one word and they snap it on to another word that helps them make an association that lets the information come to mind. So to go back to Nidhi's question, he asked earlier, if you don't see things, won't you forget it? And how would you recall if you can't see anything? Well, I don't know whether it's seeing or not, but when you have to remember a word in Sanskrit, for example, like vestu, and I just think in my mind, well, what can I think? I can think of my friend whose last name starts with a V putting on a vest. And now I'm not seeing her put on a vest, but I'm remembering what would be something like a combination of procedural memory, the feeling of putting on a vest, and it's the weirdest thing. Now I'm actually kind of envisioning something visual. But I just would let the associations do the work on what would you call it? A combination of levels that are largely semantic, I guess, but they're echoic. There's a sound relationship there. There's a conceptual relationship based on things that are already in memory. It's already known that V, right, vestu, is connected to all kinds of other words that start with V. So you just make this association. And that's how I proceeded. I'll share some other tips and strategies that I used to help make this work a little bit better. But I got this, and I focused on words because the ancient dude, who we don't know, wrote this around 90 BCE, said to do so. And this is a point here. Just follow the instructions, right? And he gives some instructions. And then the other thing, too, that was really, really important from this, right or wrong, I've always thought that this is the key. This is so important for helping people understand memory techniques, is he says it's the instructor's duty to teach the proper method of search in each case, and for the sake of greater clarity, to add in illustrations, some one or two examples of its kind, but not all. And so what I think, why this ancient wisdom was put there and why it's so important is because you need to get the student to do the work. And if you just had like these endless examples, so many people would just go, oh, great, great. And they would browse the examples, instead of actually doing something to figure it out for themselves. This is ancient wisdom. I've always put it into practice. A lot of people say, why don't you give more examples? Well, an abundance of examples never helped me, but just diving in and doing the work helped me. And I, back to this text, I can watch this guy do his magic routines until I'm blue in the face, and it's fun. He's a great teacher of magic. But until that I go and let the cards go and just, get someone to say, hey, stop, and they stop right there, and I look at the 4 of spades, and I think, what the heck is that number? And I think, that, has to be. And then I go in and grab it and do the routine. Unless I actually do it, I'm not going to ever get the results. So this is very, very important. You learn by actually doing, right? You learn by doing. And that's very, very important. So I hope that makes sense to you all. Let me check in with the chat. And we will see as we carry on how this plays out with 3 visualization exercises that helped me. So, LadyB, good to see you, LadyB. Thanks for being here. You say, do you think if you're older and you're having trouble comprehending things that you're stuck at that comprehension level because you're an adult? I think that stuckness does have explanations. Stuckness certainly does have explanations, and it can have to do with age. But the question is, what about age does it have to do with, and what are some strategies to get out of it? And part of it would have to do perhaps with memory, if not all of it, right? Because we get into patterns that are in our memory, and likely in what is called procedural memory to a large degree, and habits that have a neurochemical component that are very hard to shake, not only because of age, but because of the depth of the neuronal networks that have created around this. But we know that those neuronal networks can change. And how can we change them? Well, we've got to do something, right? We've got to make a plan for what it is that we're going to do, and then we've got to be consistent about doing it, and we have to have a variety of tools that will help us do that. And so then it becomes no longer a question of age or the state of the brain. It becomes a question of what does it take any individual to make a plan and then stick with the plan. And obviously there's a huge, massive industry around this, and I have lots of ideas, and some of those ideas have helped lots and lots of people. But the real question is, are you going to explore those? And what is it going to take to get you to explore those things? If you're stuck there and having a difficulty comprehending things, are you going to show up in the ways that are required in order to help you put some goals around being able to comprehend things better, so that you don't have to be stuck anymore and that you can be moving? So that's the question back at you. If you want to comprehend things better, what are those things? What are you willing to do to put a plan together to tackle them? And will you do it? We could throw endless ideas about what you can do and how to do it, etc. But let's start there. And you say, I want to get better at comprehending things. I just don't know where to begin. What's my advice? My advice is to first of all point out, as Al Pacino does in his role of John Milton in the movie The Devil's Advocate, advice is the worst advice. What is your advice to yourself? What do you want to get better at comprehending things for? What things do you want to be better at comprehending? What does comprehending mean? What is going to happen? What's going to be the payoff when you're able to comprehend things better? Start to answer questions like that, and then we can get going. But advice, what do you need advice for? Advice is not going to get you where you need to go. What's your advice to yourself? What is it that you want? What are you willing to do to get it? What does comprehension mean? And what can we do to start to test that we actually want what you think comprehension is? Now, we've got a live stream that you can go and watch on setting a vision statement for your memory progress. And if you haven't seen that and you haven't followed through those exercises, then you might like to do that. It's really, really something that doesn't really have to do with comprehension. It has to do with, is the pain bad enough that you're actually going to do something to solve it? And then if you go, well, yes, I am going to do something to solve it, then you have to think about, how am I going to filter out all the oodles of advice, knowing that that can overwhelm you, right? When you already have the knowledge of what it is you need to know. You do. And you could just sit there and just consume stuff all day long. But if you're not asking yourself the questions and writing them out on paper, as I suggest in the vision statement live stream, then you may be locking yourself into more of the same instead of making a change. So you can go through that. And just find somebody you trust. If it comes down to you needing to make an investment, find somebody you trust and just make the investment. You're worth it. So I'm not necessarily a big fan of the coaching industry myself, but I've gotten coaches when I needed them, and it's worth it. You're the asset. You're the champion horse. So many people don't see themselves that way, which is just a terrible crime against yourself. You're worth the investment. Might you make a mistake? Might you choose the wrong person? Yes and no, right? You can't make a mistake if you make an intelligent decision. You understand, caveat emptor. You might make a mistake. You might invest in the wrong help from the wrong person, etc. But at least you took some sort of action, and then you can learn from what you did and get better help the next time. I've been through this, and it's not a problem with the coaching industry. It's just a problem with the fact that there's a lot of choice out there and you might make a mistake from time to time. I've had it both ways. Amazing experiences with coaches and not so amazing experiences with coaching. But even the not so amazing experiences with coaching were still pretty damn good because I learned a lot about how to find better coaches, and that you will too. But don't sit around stuck when you could go out and do some research on performance coaches, or I don't know, maybe there's comprehension coaches or whatever is out there, and just lay down some bucks. You're worth it. Find a way out. Investing in yourself has huge potential if you're not able to do it on your own. Don't feel bad if you can't do it on your own. I sometimes get overwhelmed with all kinds of information and solution, and I'll tell you, some of the best money you ever spend is just going and asking a professional who's been there before, figured a way out of it, and then they just say, yeah, just press this button, and then you've saved yourself thousands of hours of research. I'm exaggerating, but even 1 hour of research can be way too much to spend when there's just a person who knows, who's like, yeah, a little bit of this, a little less of that, bang, presto, your problem's fixed. It's really that simple sometimes. It's not without risk, but it really can be that simple. I've seen it myself as a coach, which, I offer from time to time, and it's pretty amazing. Lee Escobar, he'd known stuff about memory techniques before, he'd studied before and so forth, but he just wasn't putting the pieces together. He understands the value of talking to somebody who has a little bit more expertise in what the techniques are and the history of them and what to read and what might accelerate your practice, ways to think, to shift what you're doing, how to assimilate what other people are telling you to do, because he has other coaches. And he made a wonderful video saying how about a week and a half after we met, he finally made a huge step towards his goal and memorized almost his goal of several hundred names of people. He almost made it to the exact number that he wanted. And part of it, I can tell you, I watched the session that we had together back because I was trying to think, what did I say that was so impacting that led to this or helped lead to this? And I think that what it was just partly not only the actual words that I was saying and so forth, but he was able to see how I was using my hands to explain certain concepts related to the memory techniques. And then I was able to say and hear what it was that he was struggling with, diagnose what might be the most likely solutions for practice, suggest one book that could help, and away we go. Now, the thing to understand in that video that we'll play it today, why not? He says, lots of nice things. But the way to understand this really is that Lee did the work. Lee invested in himself, and then he put whatever I said into action. And he's worth it. He obviously values himself in that way, and it worked out great. And I'm glad that it did. But he did the work. He did the work. It's likewise with James Gerwing, who I hope to get a video with as well, who just writes me. He's like, well, I now hold all these records, broke all these records. I'm now the Canadian memory champion. Thanks for your input. I love that. Thanks for your input, because that's what it was. He did the work. He practiced. He put the knowledge into action. He wins the prize. Amazing. Wonderful. Wonderful. But that's the truth of it all. He invested in himself, got the training, went through it, and did the work. And that's what you need to do too. So believe in yourself, and you can get there. Invest in yourself. You're the asset. You are the champion horse. No one else gets to have your experience. You might as well make it the best possible one that it can be. Hope that makes sense. I'm going to take a little bit of a break, and let's listen to Lee's story because I think it's really fun, and then I'll be back.
Hey everybody, so I'm here in the Atlanta airport. I was just thinking about how grateful and thankful I am for what Anthony did for me. I do seminars all across the country, usually have about 100 to 300 people every single weekend, and one of my biggest goals was to be able to memorize their names, and started studying some stuff and learning, and it wasn't connecting as fast as it needed to, and I just wasn't connecting the dots, and started doing some research online, and there I found Anthony. And Anthony, I just want to tell you thank you very much for all that you've done. Now, man, my memorization is through the roof. I've almost reached my goal of getting 300 people at one time. I'm not exactly there yet. I'm off just by a few, but I'll get there as I keep practicing and keep connecting what I've learned from you and what you've put and you've helped me with. And so I just want to tell everybody, if you're looking to take your memory palaces and your memory techniques to the next level, I mean, Anthony is the guy. If he can help me go from not even remembering people's names, and that's the biggest issue of my life in my seminars, to actually being able to memorize over 100 and something people's names, close to 200, man, he can help any of you guys out with anything. So I just want to give a shout out to Anthony. Very thankful, very grateful for meeting you. Very thankful for the fact that as soon as I sent you an email, you responded very quickly, very promptly. You just opened up your time and gave me a scheduled time very quickly also. And the support afterwards was well above and beyond. I mean, you could have ended it right there, but he didn't. He kept emailing me and make sure I was okay, and would send me emails periodically to make sure that I was following up and following through. So again, just want to thank you very much, Anthony. As I'm walking through this airport, getting ready to jump on a plane in Seattle, I was just thinking about how grateful and thankful I am for you being in my life and for helping me take those steps to the next level. And if anyone is out there is ever thinking about, should I work with Anthony, the answer is absolutely, unequivocally yes, beyond the shadow of a doubt. I could probably keep going on and on. But again, thank you, Anthony. And I really appreciate you. You've been a blessing in my life.
So, in case you missed the details there, the details is that he had a goal, and then he didn't let anything get in his way in order to make it happen, and he needed some help, and he reached out, and then he put the ideas into action. So, to LadyB, I would suggest that you really, really get some goals and vision together for yourself, and then make it happen. Do whatever it takes to invest in yourself, but try it on your own first, and then figure out who it is that you're going to trust, who's actually giving you some results in advance, and then, try what they say, and you could amaze yourself. All right, Nicholas says, mind-blowing. You are good. Thanks, dude. Well, thank you, Nicholas, for the kind words. And LadyB says, when people go to school to become a video editor, there's like a syllabus of where to begin, or else you're all over the place with your learning. Okay, so let's talk about that. That's right, a syllabus. Great. Not everything in life has a syllabus, though. And when you use a word like comprehension, how can we create a syllabus for you? What does comprehending mean? What does comprehending things mean? What are the things, right? You're getting some pro bono coaching here. And if you would put some more definition around these things, you might find that you could generate a syllabus all on your own. So you say, I read newspapers and books and stuff, but I feel like I get nowhere. It's taking me so long to understand something. Then I try to simplify it, but you said simplifying is bad. Where do you remember me saying simplifying, and in what context? I probably have said that simplifying is bad, but probably in a very specific context. And if you are generalizing that statement and placing it all over things, then that's not helping you. So think about things in the context, and don't wipe them in over everything under the sun. That's not helpful for you or anybody. You need to be more specific than that. Simplifying can be incredibly bad, and often people dumb things down in ways that don't serve anybody, right? So I'm almost certain I've said that, and I will say it again. But at the end of the day, I think you're maybe generalizing it onto things where I didn't mean that at all. Nicholas says, adjust and adapt, fail forward, progress, not perfection. Success leaves clues for sure. Anthony can save you lots of time and energy from modeling after someone who's doing what you want to do. All right. So LadyB says, you think people who have this problem don't have a vision? I really don't know. I'm not going to generalize about people. I don't know who you're talking about, but we can think about some of the greatest success stories. They definitely had a vision. And then we can think about what success means in those examples. And then you might say, well, that's not the kind of success that I want. But generally, people who want anything and they get it, there's a vision involved. Maybe they didn't write a vision statement, but if you haven't tried writing a vision statement, how do you know that it would work or not work? There's many examples that we can think of. So we can think of business examples. For example, Steve Jobs. Definitely writing some vision statements there, to be sure. And if you just extract from that, nearly every major company has written a vision statement for itself in order to keep in mind what is the goal or the set of goals and to make that happen. And they even often require that their employees be able to repeat what that vision statement is, right? There's a reason for that. And there's a reason why some visions get things more ahead than others. If you think of individuals, well, we just shared with you Lee's story and so forth. Now, whether or not it's going to work for you, who can anticipate? Part of the problem in the world is that so many people want to know whether things are going to work for them before they try it or not. And that's just not the way that it works. I didn't think that his book was necessarily going to be something that I wanted to use in performance. I'm still not sure, but I still just wanted to play with it to work, to improve my skills. And wow, it's been part of a big, long journey in which I have vision statements. And without it, so many things wouldn't happen, regardless of whether or not I actually go and perform with this stack. Right? So we also shared just now from the Rhetorica ad Herinium the power or the use of limited examples instead of an abundance of examples, because without you giving the examples, we get lost very, very quickly. So you mentioned the newspaper. What is it you don't comprehend from the newspaper? Why do you need to comprehend it? For what purpose? Right? What vision, what better world is going to come out of understanding the newspaper better? I'm not saying there isn't one, but what is it? Right? If I wanted to understand the newspaper better, I would think, why do I want to understand the newspaper better? What is going to come out of better understanding, better comprehension of the newspaper? Rather, what I think, and it's what I'm doing right now, I want to understand memory techniques better. I have the vision of understanding memory techniques better so I can help other people better. And how is that going to happen? Well, I'm going to need to try a variety of other things and continue to research, but not just research, put the research into application. What is part of that? It's memorizing a deck that I might never use, a stack, better said, that I might never use, learning to perform some of the things that he talks about in order to think through not only the memorization of cards, but the memorization of routines, and then how that plays out in practice with a little bit of performance. And I've got already years of performance in Magic behind me, and that's part of it. Also, I'm now reading Bruno's 30 Seals. I'm actually, and this is Scott Gosnell's translation, shout out to Scott. It's in the other room, otherwise I'd show it to you. But in order for that to happen, in order for that vision statement to be realized, the book has to be read. And then the actual techniques need to be played around with, experimented with, explored. And then it needs to be codified into discussion, into experiments with getting other people to try things and see how that works for them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I really just don't understand how that we're going to proceed for you without some specific vision statement. But that's got to come from you and all the examples under the sun of what other people are doing. Maybe a couple will help, but you can get lost in example world, which is what so many people are lost in. They are self-help junkies. They are happy little story junkies, and they just go, oh, isn't that great? And oh, but I could never do that. Or they delude themselves into thinking something's happening because they're consuming all those stories. And you know what? They might be right. They might be right that eventually something will tick over, right? But the hierarchy really requires a lot of exploitation. For anybody to be at the top, they actually require a lot of you to not be taking action. And they use the tools of the evil Dr. Forget to make sure that happens in some of these hierarchies. So be cautious of what it is you're consuming and who you're consuming it from. And ultimately just have a variety, cross-index, and be, carpe diem and caveat emptor. Or caveat emptor and carpe diem. All right. So you say your sister will read anything and understand it. Look, LadyB, anything and understand it? I can come up with some books that I bet you she won't understand. Your generalization and exaggeration could be part of the problem. If you want to be more like that, then great. But if you want to really get ahead, I suggest you start using more specific terms here and not exaggerate. And then you say, but maybe I should narrow it down and stop trying to be like her. You can't be like her. There's only one of anybody. And we only need that one. We need you. We need you to be the best possible you. And the beauty is only you can do it. Only you can do it. So invest in yourself. Make sure you're getting good help from qualified people. And those people should have qualifications in you, in what you want to get, in what you actually want to get. And they're out there. They can help you. But you can also just help yourself by asking better questions. All right. Nicholas says, I love the questions to yourself to break it down for yourself so you can get to what you truly desire. And Nicholas says, examples are great for someone like me, but it definitely comes from just taking the action. Thank you so much. Can't believe this is free. Well, it's not free. This is not free. This is something that will cost you time, energy, and attention, and you are paying with your attention right now. So this is not free. People need to really start to change what free means, right? What does free mean? Free means frequency, relevance, edutainment, insofar as there's any entertainment going on here, and engagement. That's what this is. It's a frequent, relevant to people interested in memory, edutainment that hopes to engage you to invest in yourself. So if it's free, that's what it is. FREE. All right. Hope you like my little acronym there. But that's, I believe, the truth of the matter. LadyB says, don't you do coaching? Yes, under certain circumstances. Reach out by email if you would like information about that. Probably best if you take the course first thoroughly to make sure that that kind of coaching is what you need. Because if you're not actually using the magnetic memory method, or you just need life coaching, then we'll call it what it is, right? But magnetic memory method training is coaching in the magnetic memory method. And if it's life coaching, then let's be clear about what it is that you want. So if you really want to do memory training, then make sure you've taken the free course first and consider the magnetic memory method masterclass. That's very, very important. So Nicholas says, so entertaining and educating. It makes me so excited. I love the acronym, by the way. Excellent, excellent. That's great. Thank you, Nicholas. I'm glad to hear that. All right. So the 3 visualization exercises that helped me the most were drawing. And I went into my little depository of old notebooks and I saw how much drawing I used to do. So this is from quite some time ago, but there's drawing on almost every page. And I just drew and drew and drew and drew and drew. And then I drew some more. None of it's any good. But I drew some more, drawing. And I also have drawn many memory palaces. But I got into figure drawing because I wanted to help my brain better try to see images in my head. And I think that the years and years and years of just constantly drawing figures have helped this. Now, for people who are thinking Aphantasia cure, I mean, do you want to spend all those years drawing? I really don't know, but I can't say that it was a waste of time. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about space. I learned a lot about how you can memorize things spatially, how you can memorize formulas for helping you make a decent representation of a skull without having any, talent or so forth. And there's many examples. And again, this is not particularly good drawing, but before that I memorized these formulas, I couldn't even get close to that. It was horrible. Maybe I still am horrible, but I personally I think it's much better than it is without those formulas. And I just memorized them and away we go. So I think that was part of what led to this. And I still draw frequently and draw memory palaces, draw all kinds of imagery that helps when I can't get an image in my head, so to speak, a magnetic image, which involves multisensory elements as opposed to just something visual. What I'll do is I'll just help my brain by getting it on paper like this and add some color. So, this is like a visual code that I see when I can't think of something because I'm tired or I haven't had coffee yet or whatever, and I need to get the work done. I need to have some learning going on, and I'll just draw it out. And it's still a magnetic image. It's still in a memory palace, but this simple step just really, really has helped with doing it anyway. Because here's the thing. You don't have to fake it till you make it, but you have to show up, and you have to show up consistently. And it's not just for the sound of words or anything like that. You can do it for characters and all kinds of stuff. And it's just amazing. So give that a try. Just move forward. Drawing for visualization, quote unquote visualization, has been really, really helpful. Another thing that's been helpful, and I can just sort of do this now in my head, is go to art galleries all the time. So look at art, and then as if mental painting. So rather than, worrying that I couldn't see images in my head, I would just do as if I could. So if I could see images in my head, what would they look like? And to get started with that, to make it something that was plump and robust and a vibrant practice, I would just say, what is it like as if I could? And so I would have this sort of physical sensation, physical imagination of running a paintbrush over a painting that I'd seen. And I would name the shapes in some sense. So I'd think of a Francis Bacon painting, for example, which I can barely bring to mind as I'm speaking. Maybe if I stop, I could get it better. But I would think of what are the shapes there? Memorize what those shapes were, and then later go and think about mentally paintbrushing them. And I think that's been very, very helpful. And then there's consistent practice with playing cards, memorizing playing cards consistently. And what that comes down to is very, very simple. You look at a card and then you say, well, what image have I created to associate with this? This is Tipper Gore in this case. That's based on the major, which is, you learn all about that if you want. But the major helps you derive a word. Remember the focus earlier on words and how important words were. So you don't have to think about why it's this or that. The major helps you derive an image from that. And so that suggested Tipper Gore. There's nothing to see there. If anything, there's a variety of images to see, such as the individual herself. But because of how a PAO works, person, action, object, it's best to try to choose words that indicate as much as possible a person, an action, and an object. So Tipper Gore is not just Tipper Gore, but it's Tipper Gore with her parental advisory tape, and she's taping, right? So it's the person Tipper with the object of tape, and she's taping. What is she taping? Well, if the next card was Queen of Diamonds, which, look, it is, then the image for that is the samurai from Ran. And that's because the number, using the major, suggests the word ran. But ran is so abstract, it's like past tense of running, but there's a movie called Ran, and it has samurais. And so now Tipper Gore can just be taping with her parental advisory the samurai in the movie Ran. It's just beautiful. And it works really, really good. And have a lot of fun with that. And consistently doing it, not to compete, but just as brain exercise, just as the ability to exercise memory and really stretch what's possible and have a daily stretch, and as a creativity exercise, as a warm-up to memorizing other things, and just as part of a healthy diet of memory training. Just really wonderful to memorize cards all the time. And now it's just so much more interesting to have a visual element. I haven't explored it enough, but I wanted to make an update about it. Very, very excited. And it's very helpful and useful. So those are 3 tips for you. I got lots more tips on magneticmerrymethod.com on visualization and so forth. Non-visualization, visualization. And Nicholas says, I will do the MMM course and the masterclass course. Then I will be doing the one-on-one coaching if you will want to when the time is right in the not so far away future. I have a feeling. Well, that's a very nice feeling indeed. I appreciate it and look forward to that in each and every level and step that you've suggested. And yeah, don't know all the ins and outs about Aphantasia, but I'm still very interested in it and going to look further into it. But for those who want some more information more immediately, you can go and listen to my interview with Alec, who helps people. And I'm sure that my discussion with him has helped in some way my coming to this experience. You can also, if you like, go through the first material I put together about Aphantasia, which gets into the history of the term and the central argument that I still stand by, if you would like. I'm putting these links in the chat, but they're also in the description for you if you're watching the replay and you want to have a fast path to click, click, clickety click. And here we go. We also have this interview with Lynn Kelly on memory craft and some visualization exercises that I didn't talk about today very much that you can go and explore more. And that is here. So I recommend that you follow up on those things if you're interested, and hope you do, and hope to hear more from you. And like Nicholas, hope to see you in the courses so that you can start to get some results and have a better memory, if that is your wish. All right, so Houdini is here. Good to see you, Houdini. I love that name. I love Houdini. He was great. I wonder what Houdini would have thought about Aphantasia, and if he would have accepted it as a legit condition that people should use to make themselves feel more miserable, or if they would see it as a path towards getting the job done anyway. And Houdini says, I have a problem in learning English vocabulary. Great. What is the problem that you have with learning English vocabulary? Please say more. While we're waiting to hear more about this problem with English vocabulary, Nicholas says, such a go-giver. I look forward to working with you too. Also, on the note of go-giving, I have 2 copies of Ultra Learning to give away. It's showing up ghostly, but I guarantee you it is very yellow. And I have these 2 copies. Now, I'm not sure how that I'm going to give them away, but please be on my email list if you're not already to make sure that that happens. You can get started at magneticmemorymethod.com/YT. It's a really good book. It will help you accelerate your career, master hard skills, and outsmart the competition. And I believe that is true for those who read it. And I'm going to be giving 2 copies away, but that will be on my email list. So make sure that you have taken the free course so that you're on it at magneticmemorymethod.com/YT. So I can, as Nicholas says, be a better go-giver and give some more. And thanks to Scott for arranging those copies. I'm going to be keeping mine, though, which is over here. And it's also see-through with the green screen, but it's very green. Very beautiful. Nice book. All right. Houdini says, I usually forget it after learning. How can I store it in my long-term memory? Okay, well, what you want to do is get started at magneticmemorymethod.com/YT and start to learn the tools of memory techniques. You're going to learn to create memory palaces. Then in those memory palaces, you'll use tools of association that enable you to take an English word, make an association, and put that association in the memory palace so that you can get back and then use the memory palace in recall rehearsal to get the information into long-term memory. And then you'll want to use something called the levels of processing effect, or we more interestingly call the big 5 of learning, which allows you to put all of that into reading, writing, speaking, and listening so that you get a compound effect as you continue to go. And you'll have all the vocabulary that you could ever want in your memory, assisted by memory techniques and just good old-fashioned learning techniques, all coming together in pretty much a swift single blow. It's that simple. All right, so Nicholas is very, very kind and also very generous. Thank you for that, offering that help, Nicholas, and you're very, very welcome. So Houdini, I hope that helps you out. And whatever happens, I hope that people will not get hung up in the wicked ways of the evil Dr. Forget. Who is evil Dr. Forget? He's the little voice in your head that says, it's too hard. It's the little voice in your head who says, I give up. It's the little voice in your head that wants you to fail, and everybody has the evil Dr. Forget. But everybody also has the very wonderful and perhaps stubborn and obstinate Edgar the Elephant, who won't give up and who battles the evil Dr. Forget, pushes him back each and every day to get the job done without the sob story and without all the issues and the problem. And his number one tools really boil down to memory palaces, memory techniques of association, and showing up to do the work and not making it hard on your brain, not making it visual, because memory techniques were never primarily visual ever anyway. Making sure that you draw your memory palaces and draw anything you want to memorize if you can't see it in your head. And even if you can, give that a try to see if it improves how you use memory techniques, and have lots of journals. Different colored journals, does that help? I have no idea, but I do. I like them to be different colors and change the colors, and I like to have many, many journals for many things. There's no end to the journals. Why? Because it helps. It works. There's lots of reasons why that it works. We'll spare you all of the scientific research and links now, but there you go. That's what I recommend for people. So let me know in the chat, what is exciting to you right now? What are you looking forward to? What's the best thing that happened to you this year? And if you have any further questions or things that you want to talk about, that would be very interesting indeed. And I will stick around for a few minutes to see if we have any discussion at all to cover. And then that is perhaps that. So let me see here in the chat. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. And Nicholas says, thanks for that just now about Dr. Forget and Edgar the Elephant and these helpful tools you use. You're very welcome, Nicholas. Thank you for your wonderful participation and discussion today. I really appreciate it. And Houdini says, where will I find the tool of the magnetic memory method for vocabulary learning? Can you provide a link? Yes, I can provide a link, and I would start wider than vocabulary learning. Just go to magneticmemorymethod.com/YT, and it'll get you there. And the link is in the chat for you. And yeah, so I have lots and lots of things to do. I've gotten back the latest edit of my new book, and I'm looking forward to going through that and starting to... I'm about maybe 23% through revising the latest draft, cutting stuff out that doesn't seem to need to be there, clarifying a few points, adding a few bits of research here and there for those who would like to follow up on the research. And looks like it's going to be a decent book. Put it in the extra elbow grease, which is a disciplinary measure I've placed upon myself. And really got to thank Lynn Kelly for her inspiration in books like Memory Craft and The Memory Code, and I hope that you all will add them to your library, and more than add them to your library, read them and allow the things that are said in these books to guide your practice and improve how you're using memory techniques. And if you're interested in better memory, just buckle down to one thing that I think is true of any field of practice, which is to continue to study the techniques that are involved in that practice. Continue to get new ideas to try, to implement, and continue to practice in meaningful ways. And that is another acronym that stands for the one sip at a time principle, SIP. Study continuously. Don't stop. Implement what you learn from what you study, and then practice what you've learned and implemented with information that improves your life. And you never know when a breakthrough might come. It may come for you quickly, or it may come for you slowly. And for me, this is a very, very slow, long sort of thing, and I'm really glad that it happened. I don't know for how long it will remain, and I just will enjoy the ride while it's here as I continue to practice and do things like continuing to get books like Memorandum here and work with them to explore what happens when you start to not only memorize cards, but memorize the order of the cards. And that's very, very exciting. It's new, strange, it's interesting. I haven't mastered it yet, but I'm getting closer and closer. And as I hope I've shown you today, cards can be wonderful for many, many things. And drawing your memory palaces doesn't have to be complicated. There, that's it. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. All right, Houdini's got it. Excellent. Nicholas says, completely off subject, but I thought I'd share since it's a weird coincidence. Quinky dink, I like that. I supposedly have an incurable disease called Aphantasia and had to double take when I saw the title of your live stream. Interesting. What's that all about? Aphantasia. Haven't heard of that, but there's always something new to learn. Isn't that great? Isn't that wonderful? Always something new. I think that that's wonderful. All right, so we'll have to look that up. And without any further ado, I am off for an afternoon of editing this new book. Can't wait to get it out for you. And if, speaking of books, you would like to potentially get one of these 2 free copies of Ultra Learning, make sure you're on my list. The best way to subscribe is at magneticmarymethod.com/YT so that you're notified. And I hope that I can get it to you. And we got a question here from Houdini before we go. Sir, when I go through Memory Palace, I have a problem in making up stories and they don't add up. So what kind of stories are we talking about? One of the things that's very important is to be specific about the issue that you're having and give examples, your examples. The teacher's examples are less important than the ones that you create for yourself. So what I would suggest is you look up the Feynman technique. We have some videos on this channel about using the Feynman technique in the concept of memory and put a little bit more into how you're describing the problem in a way that can give you clues about what you could do to solve it for yourself. That's essentially the core of what I've understood from the Feynman technique, and it's the core of Ultra Learning, and I'm sure that you can be able to get great value out of learning more about that technique. Kushdeep says, how to memorize math table up to 100. Great. So do you mean memorizing 2 times 2 is 4 and all that sort of stuff? One way that you can do this, if you're having difficulty, is create a memory palace, and then for each of the calculations, the answers, have a station in the memory palace, and then 2 times 2 equals 4. So by a door, you can have 2 plus 2 equals 4 and have 4 shoes by the door. And you don't have to incorporate elements of rhyme every time. You don't have to have the door be involved, because that would be, logical in the sense of a rhyme. But you can think about how to lay that out. And so it'd be I think you'd end up with a network of memory palaces, and you can work in tens. So with 10 memory palaces of 10 stations each, this is a very trivial memory task, and you can go ahead and do it. And maybe just start with the first 10, or the first 10 that you don't already know, and then work it through that way. I might do something like that actually to come up with a set of examples, not the whole thing exemplified, but who knows? Maybe one day I will do a whole set of examples, which is in the new book, against the advice of the Rhetorica ad Herennium. But not exactly, because it's not everything. It's just one thing at the end of the day. All right. Nicholas says, me too, Houdini, but I just think I haven't really tried to focus and do it with fantastic guidance like this. It must just take practice. Practice is the only way, but practice that is embedded in continual study. Like I say, study, implement, practice with information that improves your life. That's taking it one sip at a time. That's what the magnetic memory method is all about. Don't get hung up in perfectionism. Don't get hung up in your ego story about it being, hard from time to time. Don't get worried about mistakes. You might make mistakes. You almost certainly will make mistakes. They're not avoidable, but you learn from them. And one of the cool things that you need to understand about like taking on really, really big challenges is if you're going to do a mem deck in performance, like the kind of stuff that he's talking about, the memorization is the least of the challenges. You then need to be able to recall things in front of people. And on the point of practice, I started today by stopping at a card, making a number, and testing, was that the number, to practice doing it in front of people, right? Because it's not going to become a skill unless it's practiced in front of people. And I've been doing magic for a very long time, and I have made many, many mistakes and embarrassing ones. But what ends up happening is you learn how to compensate for mistakes in multiple ways. So you learn how to not get your ego involved in the mistakes so that you wind up punishing yourself for days and days and days and, I shouldn't have made that mistake and blah, 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 because mistakes are going to happen. You learn how to, in the case of magic, but also in other areas of life, how to just keep moving forward, even though you're going to get a little bit of ego sting. And you learn how to then observe what went wrong and figure out how that you might not make that mistake again in the future, or have better strategies for how to have the follow through in at the end of the day. There's a great mentalist, Pete Turner, if memory serves, is his name. And he says that one of the best things you can do is to go out, try the most ambitious thing in front of the biggest people, fail ridiculously so that you can learn how to deal with failure, because it's going to happen again and again and again and again. And it happens in magic all the time. And one of the neat things that I've learned from magic is what essentially can be called like jazz, magical jazz, which is to just find a way to turn that mistake into a solution. And it doesn't work out as well as it could in other ways, but you're just jamming, you're just riffing on it, and you develop a number of techniques to still get to the outcome that you need in the end. And so there's lots of principles behind that. But in a memorized deck, you've got to really, really be on the ball, because the amount of alternative endings, if you want to maintain the memorized deck, goes down a little bit, or you need to be able to correct the memorized deck in real time, etc. Anyway, it's very, very fascinating. It's an interesting memory challenge. I recommend it to anybody. And I would suggest that one of the fastest paths to getting better with memory techniques as such is to do some card memorization. So don't see it as abstract from what you're trying to do. It may well be, but it will give you multiple levels of skill that will transfer to whatever else it is that you're memorizing. And you don't have to do it with magic, but for an extra level of challenge, you can certainly do that kind of thing. And it is very, very, very rewarding. So I hope everybody had a wonderful time today. Thank you for those who were here, especially those active in the discussion. And I really look forward to the next time that we have this together. And I think I missed a question about having regular sessions from Nicholas that said, are you on live streams at regular times and on certain days that I can set alarms for, so I do not miss these awesome sessions? And the answer is yes and no. So I sometimes am around this time of the week, but no promises. I would not suggest anybody go so far out of their way as to set an alarm, because there's very few times that I make scheduled sessions, and it's catch me if you can. But one thing that you can do is you can make sure that you've clicked the bell icon with your subscription to this channel, and that you've enabled your phone to be notified from YouTube. that means they'll notify you left, right, and center, I guess. But that's the best way to be notified that we are doing something at this time. But the magnetic memory method training is not really about live. It's about showing up and studying the techniques and implementing them and practicing them. It is a self-study tradition at the end of the day. Does this group activity help? Absolutely. Who does it help? It helps people most who are studying and implementing and practicing the techniques. And it is a great way and an opportunity to spread the good news about mental literacy, about these techniques, their history, how they help, who they can help, why they help, what exactly you can do to make sure that they help the best. And I really am honored and privileged to be able to do this week after week. And it's all thanks to those of you who support this initiative. And I really, really appreciate it. And Nicholas says the bell is clicked and we'll play with phone to get notified from YouTube too. Thanks. You're very, very welcome, Nicholas, and I look forward to the next time we meet and having you here. And yes, there are my cards on the table. This is about you getting yourself to train and then having some sense of community, some ongoing discussion that continues inspiring, deepening the level of knowledge, and me being able to share some of the things that I'm working on, the challenges that I face, and weird situations that come where I never would have thought, oh my God, one day I'd be sitting there and I'd be working on memorizing cards and I would see Cobra Commander in a Berlin memory palace. So clear, it's like you could reach out and touch him. Now, Cobra Commander is really the last person under the sun that I'd ever want to touch, so thank goodness he isn't real. Well, you are real. You are the asset. You are the champion horse. So what are you waiting for? Invest in yourself. Make sure you do some memory training today. I don't care what time of day it is already. Just do some kind of memory training, some kind of memory exercise. It can be as simple as getting out a pen and paper and drawing a memory palace that you might use in the morning. And so, with all that said, I bid you adieu. Thank you, everybody. Come visit me at magneticmerrymethod.com. And until we have a chance to speak again, keep yourself magnetic. Bye-bye.
384626 4338 3279 5028 84 1971 69 399375.
Hi, my name is Paul, and I've taken a few courses by Anthony Metivier, but I felt that the experience of doing it today live was the biggest advantage. Anthony has a gift in simplifying complex concepts, and I feel that I've really come away today with practical skills that I can now use effectively. It was great to immerse ourselves in the situation, to be able to apply the time, because when we're at home we may not take the time to do the memory exercises that we were doing today. I felt particularly that the thing that we did at the end of today was something that is totally unique in memory training, which is 3 days of memory, which is how to practice your skills. I've read many memory books and I've never come across a system laid out as to how to practice what you've learned, and this is what I gained today from Anthony's course. So I give it 10 out of 10. Thank you.
5342 1170 679.